A high-stakes political battle is now underway in the Lone Star State of Texas, and this is a political battle that could have very large, massive reverberations across the U.S. ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. This is On the Record with Atlanta News First. I'm Tim Darnell, happy to be joined again by my friend and colleague Rick Folbaum. Rick, since the last time you and I were on this amazing split screen technology together,
Right.
there's been a lot of changes here in Atlanta News First. We are now a 24-hour news, independent news and information station with full of amazing local programming, one of which you're heading up every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. called On the Record. Tell us what this is all about.
Well, we're really excited about this because we live here in Georgia in one of the most dynamic political states in the entire country. And as we've seen over the last several election cycles, Georgia has become critical to anyone who wants to win national office. We know that Donald Trump was not able to win the presidency in 2020 because, in part, he lost Georgia. He was able to win in 2024, in part because he won Georgia. So there you just have a real clear example of why Georgia is so important on the national political landscape, but locally as well here too. There are so many interesting races that are coming up here in Georgia over the next couple of years, the next couple of cycles. Of course, we have an open governor's race that's coming up in 2026. We have a senator who is going to be defending his seat for the very first time, John Ossoff, who's going to try to win another term as the U.S. Senator from Georgia. We also have a mayoral election in Atlanta. And we have the entire city council turning over here in Atlanta. And of course, every congressional district, every U.S. congressional district in the state of Georgia and around the country also will be holding elections in 2026. So with all of that going on, we thought that we would put a show together that would really tap into the excitement and the energy around the Georgia political scene. We're going to be doing newsmaker interviews with some of the top politicians here in the state, some of the people whose names you are hearing in the news day in and day out. These are candidates for office. These are people considering a candidacy for office. We're also going to be inviting in expert panelists who are going to be able to share their insight. These are people who have worked on political campaigns for many, many years. They know the way things work here in Georgia. They're very, very tapped into all of the different players here, and they're able to give us analysis so that you at home can make decisions that are, very important decisions for you and your family in terms of who you want to back, what policies you want to get behind, and how your voice can be better heard on the political spectrum here in the state of Georgia.
You mentioned congressional districts, congressional races coming up in 2026, and I should also mention On the Record. This is our On the Record podcast for both audio and video. On the Record, the show itself is seen every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. on Atlanta News First. But for our podcast purposes today, let's talk about congressional elections and specifically congressional redistricting. Right now, at this hour on Wednesday, on this date, the Texas State Legislature is set to reconvene after a months-long walkout from every member of the Texas Democratic State Legislative Delegation. These lawmakers walked out and actually left the state of Texas, most heading to the state of Illinois after Governor Greg Abbott and the Texas Republican leaders at the State House and under the State General Assembly decided to push through a newly redrawn Texas congressional map that would, in theory, add a number of GOP majority seats to Texas's congressional delegation. Now, this is being done in the middle, in the middle of two census years. We typically see redistricting and redrawing of congressional maps and state legislative maps after every census that is held at the beginning of every decade. Governor Greg Abbott, at the urging of President Donald Trump and the National Republican Party, really deciding to undertake a massive redistricting in the middle of a decade, and that's prompted a walkout. It's not the first time that the Texas Democratic delegation has left the state to prevent a quorum, but now they have returned. They returned a couple of days ago, and we could be looking at a newly redrawn Texas congressional map, and that could have reverberations across the country.
I mean, anybody who thinks that politics is boring, take a look at this, because this is really high drama, bare knuckles politics here. The Democrats, of course, by leaving the state, denied the Republican legislature a chance to have a quorum and to hold a vote on these new maps that they have redrawn. And you're right, this is a little unusual. Most of the time, redrawing of political maps and districts takes place every 10 years when there's a new census, when you could take a look and see where the major populations are, and see which areas are gaining new residents, which areas have lost residents. And the idea here is that every one who lives in a state should have a representative who is there to voice their concerns in Washington. That's the whole idea behind the House of Representatives in the first place. And so by redrawing these maps, what the Republicans are trying to do, and you're right, this is at the urging of President Trump, is to try to offset any potential losses that they may have in the upcoming midterm elections. Now, traditionally, and this is not the rule, but traditionally speaking, the party in power loses congressional seats in a midterm election. Again, that's not always the case, but that is typically the way things go. And so the Republicans, sort of looking at the picture and realizing that their majority in the House of Representatives is so small, was trying to find some padding, trying to increase their chances of keeping the majority in the House of Representatives, which of course is so essential for President Trump in order to get his agenda pushed through. A Democratic run House of Representatives could really stymie any plans that President Trump has for the second half of this second term of his. And so it's very important for the White House that the Republicans are able to hold on to that majority. And one of the ways that they came up with, one of the strategies, was to redraw these maps, even though it's not a census year when the maps are typically redrawn. It is a chance for them, they believe, to redraw the maps to their advantage and to create more safe Republican districts. And a lot of Democrats in the state of Texas and around the country, people watching all of this, feel that this is going to remove representation for a number of groups, especially minority groups in Texas. Black voters, for example, who have been able to have a black representative, a Democrat representative in representing them in Congress, with the way that these maps have been redrawn and will most likely pass in the state of Texas, they will lose that representation because of the new district lines. And so by leaving the state, they were trying to deny the legislature a vote on this. That played out over several weeks, but those Democrats are now back in Texas. But as all of this is happening in Texas, there are other states that are run by Democrats, Democratic governors, Democratic state legislatures, where they've said, well, you know what, if you do this in Texas, then we'll redraw our maps here in our state to offset any seats that we may lose in Texas. And so it really has become at least the threat of a tit for tat here, where different states are trying to help out and help their national party by redrawing their districts in order to help them in this upcoming midterm elections. And California, of course, which is a big Democratic state run by Gavin Newsom, who's become really one of the main voices in opposition to what's going on in Texas. He is really leading the way. But there are other Democratic states as well. Illinois, which has a Democratic governor and Democratic majority state legislature. They're looking at redrawing maps based on what happens in Texas. And so this really is, there's a lot of strategy. It's all going on right now. And I think if you're sort of a political news junkie like we are, you're really tapped into this and watching it on the edge of your seat, the way that you might watch a college football game. But there really are real life ramifications for what's going to happen here, and we'll watch it play out in real time.
It's a national drama that has really captured a lot of people's attention. Let's look at some of the other states. You mentioned Democratic-run states. There are some GOP-run states like Florida that have promised to look at redistricting. However, the situation in Texas plays out, in California, New York, also Maryland, Indiana, Ohio is under a court order to redraw its maps ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Here in Georgia, we've had our own controversies with redrawn maps. Ours seem at the moment relatively stable. But what are the chances of this actually reaching inside the borders of the Peach State?
It could happen. I mean, I don't know how anybody could dismiss that possibility, given that we have a Republican governor here. We have a state legislature that is run by Republicans, both the state House and the state Senate. And so there really isn't any reason why Republicans here in Georgia could try to put in place a similar strategy and redraw the maps here in the Peach State. There would be opposition, of course, but there really wouldn't be much standing in the way of Republicans if that is in fact what they decide to do. So we'll see. I mean, right now Georgia and Governor Kemp has not been talking about doing this here, but you never know. I mean, that's the thing with politics, is you never know. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, the Republican Party has controlled Georgia's congressional delegation for many years, and this is just an example of the hyper-partisanship that has really taken hold of the nation's political climate. On Sunday, this coming Sunday at 11 a.m. on the Record, our own political reporter Doug Reardon will have, as you mentioned, Rick, a newsmaker interview with a former member of the Republican Party who has now joined the Democratic Party. This is, of course, we're talking about former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who was a state lawmaker for a couple of years, and then he ran and won the lieutenant governorship in the late 2018, I believe, 2016 or 18. And decided not to run for re-election after one term in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election and the controversy surrounding that. So we're looking at the former Lieutenant Governor being a guest on this week's On the Record on Atlanta News First, which you can watch every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Also, listen to the On the Record podcast, as well as all of our On the Record interviews. This past week, our inaugural premiere podcast was with Michael Thurman, who is an announced candidate for governor on the Democratic Party side in 2026, and we're looking at other state and congressional candidates coming up to be featured every week on the Record with Atlanta News First, airing every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Atlanta News First. Thank you for watching Political Update from Atlanta News First Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and political updates, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Listen to more of our Political Update podcasts by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.